this week's Everyday Inclusion and Belonging. I'm Mo Berkner-Boyd, the founder of the Moxie Exchange and Everyday Inclusion. Super excited for this conversation this week with Chris Petrie talking about love as a business strategy. Just want to do a couple things quickly. Visual description, I am a white woman. I'm wearing my hair curly today. It is shoulder length, auburn, rocking my red cat eyes. I'm wearing a red shirt with a little pattern. And behind me is my bookcase with some of my favorite books and tchotchkes. Last week, we had, and if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I had Vanessa and Joe on talking about land acknowledgements. And it had me thinking a lot. So I am sitting on Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne land, ancestral lands. And the thing that really struck me that I really learned from our conversation last week was it's not just about the past, it's also about the present and the future. And honoring the Native and Indigenous folks that are still here and how we can create a world that's inclusive for them. I think one of the things sitting here in Colorado that's really interesting to me is oftentimes I see these and I hear people like, I'm a native of Colorado. And there are these bumper stickers that people have all over the place, like I'm Colorado native. And when you talk with people who are, whether First Nations up in Canada or here in the US, Native Indigenous folks, that is really disrespectful. Unless you can trace your heritage back to a tribal nation, you're not a native. You might have been born someplace, right? So you could say, I grew up, I was born, but for all of us, let's ditch the I'm a native of language. So Chris Petrie is here with me to talk about love as a business strategy. Chris and I met like super briefly when we were both at the Rice Business, shout out Rice Business, DEI summit. And Chris was like racing off to pick up his nephew. But I saw this book and I was like, Chris, tell me what's up. And I was like, you gotta come on Everyday Inclusion and I wanna have this conversation. So Chris, welcome. Please introduce yourself and then let's dig in.
All right, awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris and I'll do the same. So I am a Black man sitting in Houston. I unfortunately don't know the tribal lands, but I will go and look that up. I know that there's a map that will tell me exactly what tribes were here.
It is called Native Lands. You can get it. It's free, y'all. Google Play or the App Store.
Awesome. I will definitely look that up. I'm wearing a blue shirt with a black undershirt, a blue dress shirt, I should say. It's Carhartt if you're a brand person. And I am sitting in front of a wall with a picture that's blurred out. My background is blurred, but it's just a photo of taxis on a street in New York City from like the late 90s, if you look at the car models.
I love that. You're a car person.
Yeah, if you're a car person. But I am just excited to be here. So my name is Chris Petrie, and I am the vice president at Softway and also the co-founder of Culture Plus, which is an offshoot. And we are all about bringing humanity back to the workplace. So Softway traditionally does technology and change management communications, and Culture Plus does a lot of leadership development and culture as a service offerings to really scale and sustain cultures within workplaces. And so that is what I do. So I am in between so many different roles. So I play sales, I play HR, I play advisor, I play friend, I play leadership coach when I need to. But I'm one of those people where I drink from a fire hose. So I like to consume a lot of information and be involved in a lot of things. And that's been my life, all my life. So I'm just excited to be here.
Well, I love it. And I think that really leads us into how did love, not just the book, right, but the way of being culturally, how did this come to be?
Yeah, so back in 2015, I joined Softway. And right when I joined, we actually laid off a third of our organization. So 2 weeks into my employment, a third of our 300-person organization got laid off in the same day. So 100 people gone. And it was done in a very inhumane way. Now, I was not the CEO, but our CEO, Mohammed, if he was here, he would tell you the story that when he had to make this tough decision. And after he made this tough decision, he had some deep introspective moments, and he came to the conclusion that all of the things that were happening financially in our walls were his fault. His greed, his need for power, his inability to control the way that he communicated and or related to people, which was not good at all, led to a toxic environment being created, and one where nobody wanted to fight for the organization. No one cared about the organization. Everybody was just there for a job or a paycheck. And we were losing customers. We were losing employees. It was not a fun environment. You could walk through the halls and hear a pin drop. And it was when he went to a game from at the University of Houston, which is his alma mater. He saw a team that it was in the fourth quarter. They were slated to lose. They were like down a lot of points. And in the last 30 seconds of the game, they actually turned that around and sort of squeezed out a victory. And it was, they had like a 0.2% chance of winning on the ESPN game tracker, but they won. And he was so inspired that the next sort of Monday, when Coach Tom Herman at that time did a press conference, a reporter asked, like, so how would you attribute the resilience of this team to get this win, like at that sort of that ninth inning and that sort of down to the wire situation? And he said, it's the culture of love. And when Muhammad heard that, he's like,
what?
A football team has a culture of love. Like, it's the most masculine sport, right? Like, you don't hear love in the locker room, right? Like, that's not, it didn't make sense to him, but he wanted to listen in. And Coach Tom Herman actually went and expounded on what he meant by that. He said, we're not talking about I love you dog kind of love and that sort of superficial, dap and sort of move on. No, we all carry each other's hearts in our hands, and we're out there fighting for each other, not for ourselves. And so that environment that we created, that culture that we had, it's felt by the janitor, it's felt by everyone on the team. And we are out there fighting for each other. And that's what caused us to win the game. That's what championship teams are made of. And so after hearing that, he was just like blown away. And he will tell you that press conference changed his life forever. And that's when he asked himself, do I love my team? And he said, no. He's like, I do not love my team. Like, I don't know my team. Right. And so Muhammad went on this personal mission to transform how he showed up in meetings, how he showed up in rooms, how he led, how he worked with the team. He moved out of his office. He moved into the bullpen with everyone. He really wanted to sort of become a totally different person, all off of that one sort of conversation with a reporter. And so it was when he made that change, our company started to change because he invited the leaders who wanted to be a part of this journey to also do the same. So I'm going to pause there. There's a lot to unpack there.
I think that's right. Like this moving from kind of old school, right? How it was done and really grounded. And I think what, like the short-term monetary gain that is right. That is often the carrot that is used for CEOs or C-suite, right? Like, got to make the dollar versus we're carrying each other's hearts in our hands.
Yes.
Right. And I think, and we all, right, the folks that are a part of this community, they understand that when you're carrying each other's hearts in your hands, everybody wins.
Yes.
Right. You're not giving up anything. You're gaining so much. Yeah. So let's talk about the use of the word love.
Yeah.
It's a word that we use at Moxie a lot. Right. And genuinely, and we're not just talking about loving each other. We're talking about loving our community. And loving our clients and being so. But I want to hear you, because we don't use that word frivolously, and I know y'all aren't either. You wouldn't have this philosophy around it if you were.
Yeah, and when we talk to leaders, especially those who are not as familiar with that term being used in the workplace, the way that we like to broach it or start it is to say, like, we talk about putting people at the center of decisions, business or otherwise. And that for us is how we start with love, right? So everybody's not going to have a chance to sit at the table at every single table and make every single decision together, right? Like, that's just not realistic. But people who are at the table should be thinking about those not at the table as they're making certain decisions. And so when we talk about loving each other and having a company of love and having love as a business strategy, we are putting people at the center of our decisions, and we are assessing the impact, not just the immediate impacts, but where
Mhm.
we can 7 generations out.
Mhm.
What does this mean for people that are going to be here after us, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that is a it's a paradigm shift for some, but for us, it turned into, we tripled our revenue, right? Like over 3 years, the whole business transformed, our offerings, the way that we worked, but also our financials.
Mhm.
And so we were able to see so much more success, and we were able to, like, Culture Plus was a offshoot. That was a planned thing. That wasn't something that we put on our roadmap. That wasn't part of our 5-year strategy.
Right.
That was something a client saw our change and said, "We want you to do the same for us." And at first we said no. We were like, "That's not what we do." And they pushed back and they said, "We trust you. Can you please do this for us?" And this is a Fortune 10 organization. And so that got us on a totally different sort of revenue line and got us into a new organization, right? Like that just changed our
Yeah.
financial picture and future. And it was really because we started with love. We started talking about the hard things, right? And sometimes we have leaders who hear love and they think, "Oh, you're a doormat. Oh, everybody gets to do what they want to do. Oh, it's easy breezy. Anybody, anything
Mhm.
goes." And it's like, actually, it's the exact opposite. We've lost people because it wasn't that, and that's what they wanted. Um, we
Love
actually
is,
embrace.
love can be fierce.
Exactly, yeah, and
Mhm.
it's accountable. There's accountability in it. There's hard conversations that have to come with it. There's, when you think about, we try not to sort of equate employees to kids. When you think about a family, when you think about where love lives and its truth, it is in households typically, right? And so when you think about a kid who might be misbehaving or struggling, right? The ways in which we handle things in the workplace don't match to what we would do in that situation,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And so we believe that when you are really sort of operating in love, I'm going to have the hard conversation with you, and I'm
Absolutely.
and I'm going to have it quickly with you, right? I'm not going to wait, and I'm not going to let it build and fester and all. Like, no, we need to talk about what just happened at this moment. And if it's uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable, right? If you don't like it, you don't like it, right? And I think that that type of commitment and that type of environment allows everyone to really bring themselves forward, bring honesty forward, and reduce the need to be artificially harmonious for the sake of keeping the peace, or for the sake of making sure that people leave, feeling okay, even though there's no alignment, even though somebody is paying for the discomfort or paying for the comfort of others, right? Someone is leaving there uncomfortable. And so really sort of pushing past that long felt feeling then corporate workspaces where it's like, let's just not talk about it. Like, we'll just
Totally.
cool off. We'll just cool off and it'll figure itself out. Like all those lies that we tell ourselves. We had to build an environment where we could have tough conversations, where we could push past sympathy and apathy and really get to a place of empathy, where we're
Mhm.
actually, doing things in context where the person is taken care of in context of the business. We don't lose sight of the goal, the mission, the client, the impact. All of those things are still part of that conversation.
So many words,
Yes.
right?
Sorry.
There's vulnerability and accountability. Um,
Mhm.
uh, Folks that are part of this community have heard me say many times that comfort is a privilege.
Yes.
Right. And so, right, who's feeling comfort and why is something to really dig into, and for yourself as
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
So I can see, and I could see in like the 5 minutes you and I got to meet at the
Yeah.
conference, I can see a direct line
Hmm.
between diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and love, right? And this
Yes.
strategy. So,
Yeah.
how do you help organizations, or sort of how does this overarching philosophy support DEIB?
Yeah. And that's the reason why a lot of DEI practitioners come to us, is because we're talking about a concept that no matter what background you have, no matter where you were raised, no matter what your cultural experiences have been or religious experiences are, everyone either knows love or has been seeking love throughout their
Mm,
entire life, right?
right.
And so because it's so universal and because people can sort of latch onto it, even though it might be at first scary to hear inside of the workplace. Once you get past that sort of fear and realize that actually we've all been looking for this type of environment our entire careers, and we hope for it. And somewhere along the way, some people have lost hope for it. But we actually use this approach or this philosophy to help inclusive organizations, or those organizations that are trying to strengthen their inclusion, really look at it from the place of, hey, if we start from a place of putting people at the center of decisions, imagine the types of decisions that are going to net out of that. Imagine the time you'll get back from not having to convince everybody of a failed or bad plan, right? Imagine the ways that you're going to save failed processes, and imagine the amount of energy your team will have because they see themselves inside of the current and the future of the organization because of the decisions that are being made, how those decisions are getting made, and having transparency really into those decisions if we are walking in saying, we're thinking about you guys first. And I'll give you an example of that. So when we had those layoffs back then, we said we'd never want to do or lead with layoffs when it comes to a downturn, right? And so since then, while it's not that we will never see layoffs so that we, are not immune to them, we will say that we're going to look at every other way to save money. Pay cuts, we've done furloughs, we've tried to look at all the other options, and people can rest assured knowing that we're not going to make that call until it's absolutely necessary. And even when we make that call, we're going to do right by you. We've done it the wrong way in our past. There's going to be a human approach to everything that we do. But again, we would rather a few of us suffer a lot than one person suffer the most, right? So like, we're going to do everything to try and even this out and make it right. But that type of decision making is happening even if you're not at the table.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, right, when we're talking about whether it's inclusion or equity, right, we're always thinking about humanity, right? Yeah. We're thinking about the humanity, whether it is in our interactions or the humanity in our systems, right?
Yes.
And it's interesting. We in the app, one of the things that we have is a whole thing on inclusive decision making. Right. Yep. At that, it is like, who's not at this table? Who is not being considered? Who has the privilege of power in this? How can that person, right, beat up the idea? Like all the things to center people. And it's interesting, Chris, because in the inclusion interviews, every single person, like to a person, the last question we ask is, what makes you feel included and like you belong? People are always like, see me. Right? See me for who I am. Don't like for every layer of me, and like, don't make assumptions, but like see me. And this whole philosophy is about like centering and seeing the human experience and the humanity of an organization.
For real. And I completely agree. And one of the simplest ways that we've been able to like really take that idea and carry it forward is through food. So we're a very diverse organization, right? Like our founder, Muhammad, he's Indian, but grew up in Saudi Arabia. I'm here, a Black Southern guy, right? A lot of we have people from all over the world. And so we actually despise cold sandwiches and salads and pizzas for lunch. So whenever we're doing a lunch order, trust and believe it's going to be some delicious flavored food or cuisine. And typically we'll highlight different ethnicities or different cultures that are present in our organization, and we'll make sure that it's equitable across dietary restrictions and preferences, right? And so if one group is having hot food, everybody's going to have some hot food, right? So nobody's stuck eating something cold or bland or whatever the case may be.
Well, and right, like that, there's so many things that are so universal that if we just think of it, like, okay, everybody, let's go to the football game, right? Like it's even choices like that, like, you might do that one time, and then the next time you might let's all learn Thai cooking together, right? Like, like different. So I love that you anchored on something like that. That's love in practice.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think people so often they're looking for like this big silver bullet when it comes to. And it's not. It is so. Well, I mean, there are some things, right? Like do your pay equity audit, get your pay right.
Exactly.
Do those things. And it's so many choices like this. Like, what food are we ordering?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because what we saw was that it unlocks curiosity, especially among project teams.
Yeah.
Like having new food for the first time and having someone there who was an expert in it and someone who was sort of new to it, that expert got to be on display and got to explain, here's how you eat it. Here's the traditions behind it. Here's what this means to me in my culture or where I come from, right? Like there were those conversations that were unlocked. And what we saw in project teams, especially, is that curiosity sort of made it easier to have hard conversations, to disagree when necessary, to speak up when there was sort of, someone not saying what needed to be said. And just by way of pushing people through culinary experiences that they couldn't get on their own or would not have tried on their own, we were able to sort of bring a team to each other in ways that, in most teams, it would not have been through food that those things are unlocked. And so because we're a smaller organization, we have to be budget conscious, just like everybody else.
Right.
And so we had to like use the tools and the funding that we had to find ways to just be inclusive every day, right? Like the title is like, right. And so food is the easiest way to make someone feel welcome. I will tell you that, like
100%.
my leader, Muhammad, he's Muslim. And when we go to any type of event or any restaurant, like usually I'm the one who calls ahead or who makes sure there's a halal option, right? Who tries to do those things. But when we go to events where that's not possible, like we are just like the whole organization or group, whoever came, is just pissed because we know that he's not considered, not taken care of. He's going to sit there and eat something, a cold salad or something that is not as delicious as what we're getting. And it's especially true when you go to like D&I events. You're like, oh my god, like nobody thought about
this
like
possible? Again, because it's interesting. We put religions in practice. We have a whole section around food, right? Like think about the food that you're ordering for lunches. Think about where you're going. If somebody can't eat something, you are sending a really big message to them that you don't care.
Yeah.
And again, it's those small things that are huge impact for somebody. Like you didn't think through whether I'd be able to share this meal with you. That's supposed to be celebratory or supposed to be,
Yeah, and I used to be that person who didn't care, right? Until I got to Softway.
And we say nice but clueless.
Yes.
Right. So NBC, right? But you have to you have to center on your impact and not your intent.
Exactly. No, exactly. And it wasn't until I went to India, we have a team in India, and they just naturally cater to dietary restrictions. It's not a burden. No one acts like it's a task to do. It's just, oh no, we had to make sure this is like everybody's accounted for. And I'm like, wait, y'all just okay, like we don't do this in Houston. And so like it was just this eye-opening experience to be have someone take care of me in ways that I had never experienced before, but then to see it happen among the team. And I'm like, oh, we can definitely do this in Houston. And so I made it a personal mission to go back to Houston, and we transformed our food experiences, our potlucks, all those things to make sure everyone had something that they could walk away with. And then from there, it came into our onboarding experiences, right? Like when you talk about like an easy, quick win way to get someone to feel included, like just think about that onboarding experience. I actually had the worst first day in Softway's history. I tell the story all the time. Like I was like, it was so bad. Like, well, I get there and I'm supposed to be reporting into the CEO, Mohammed. He looks at me when I walk in. He's like, "You start today?" On my first day, and I was like, and, you have that flash, like maybe I'm crazy, like, ooh, am I here? Like,
did I get the wrong day?
Yeah, like did I get? I'm such a like, and I'm like, no, it's October 1st. I'm supposed to be here. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I have no time for you today. Just go talk to HR and they'll get you set up. Go to HR, they're not ready. I'm in the office trying to wait for them to print out all the paperwork I need to sign, making small talk. And they asked me, so can I answer any questions about Softway for you? And I'm like, okay, well, why don't I tell you what I know? And then if there are gaps or things that I should be corrected on, like correct me, like tell me like what I'm missing. And so once I finished that, she's like, oh, you know more than me. I was like, okay.
What have I walked into?
Yeah.
right? And that's right.
And
And that's what people are asking themselves on that first day in that
yeah,
onboarding. Like, what can I expect here? What I said yes, I went through
exactly.
this process. Is that real?
Yeah. And get my machine, my email address is misspelled. My name is misspelled on my email address, right? And which is my login for my computer. Go to IT and I'm like, hey, my name is misspelled. Like I'm thinking it's just gonna be easy, like, oh, let's just go ahead and fix it, update it. No, they stop and say, do you want us to fix that? And then how do you answer?
Like
Yeah, how do you
it's my name. That'd be
yes, like
cool. Yeah.
how do you how do you answer that? Like think about how do you answer that and not sound like a jerk, right? Like that's in my head. I'm like, how do I say duh? Yeah, right.
Nice stuff, right.
Yes, I'm like, well, I can imagine clients might be confused if I'm giving them one spelling and they're using a different one. Like it might create some confusion. So I'm like trying to be diplomatic as all get out. No one speaks to me on my first day. The only person who says hi to me realizes a couple of days later that I'm not his new manager. So he stops talking to me.
Wow.
And so I'm
Right,
like
so
in my office.
that's where you all were to where
Yes.
you are now. Mhm.
Yeah. And so now our first day experiences are completely different. Now we start people on Fridays. That's the day of the week where everybody's available, warm, looking forward to the weekend. So there's just this happiness and energy that's on a Friday. But also it's where we have our all hands so we can properly introduce everybody to the organization. So everybody knows who's this new face walking around the office or, joining our meetings. We also log into everybody's machines for the first time before they get there to make sure that it works. Their email address works. They have a calendar that's fully set with all their meetings. We set up one-on-ones with all the leaders, not just your reporting manager. So that way you get a chance to meet the entire leadership team. We make sure that your lunch is set, so you have lunch on the first day with your team, so everybody is
Yeah.
all there, right? We try and make sure you have a full 2.5 to 3 weeks worth of meetings already set, so you're not sitting there trying to figure out or begging people to go to meetings. I like all that social awkwardness that you typically see on the first day. We try to really mitigate that. And again, this is no budget required. This is just like
It's
a little,
all this work is how you do things, right? It's not
yeah,
something separate. It is every day how you're interacting with one another, the choices that you
exactly. Exactly. And like when you say choose your hard, I love that saying, by the way. Like, you
choose your
know,
heart.
having no onboarding is hard, right? Because you have employees that are questioning whether this was the right decision, that are maybe already looking or reconsidering in ways that you might not expect or understand, but also having a checklist of all the things you should be doing to make sure that person feels included and welcome on their first day is hard, right? Like it's not something that is there's just 5 minutes and you're in and out. Like no, we took the time and we made that a priority for the hiring manager, HR, IT, everybody got involved in that experience because we knew that people would go on social and talk about their first day. People would take photos of, we would give these little custom gift baskets. So everything we found out about you in the interview, your little favorite treats and snacks and those things were waiting for you in a gift basket. And so that would get shared on social and people were just like, oh my gosh, I love this new guy. Like, right. And just
Right.
these really small things. So we had like a really small budget for every new hire, but that was hard for us because it required time. It required us to go to the store, it required us to do these things, but it made it easy in the long run because people
Right.
then wanted to share, right? People wanted to
Well, and
stay.
when you're choosing your hard, there's an outcome either way. You're
Yes,
choosing which outcome right? Like if you
exactly.
want an inclusive culture, if you want a culture of love,
Yes,
right? You're choosing all the time because the outcome you're looking for is this human-centered, people-centered experience where everybody wins.
exactly.
So I knew this was going to be fabulous. You also, again, the book is Love is a Business Strategy. And
Yeah,
I'll link to your site in the
awesome.
comments. Chris, this has been great. I
Yes.
want you to leave me with one last truth bomb about Love is a Business Strategy.
So I guess the one last truth bomb that I would leave for everybody who's listening is I would encourage everyone to choose honesty over harmony. It has been the biggest, most transformational truth and or practice inside of our organization where we're just able to have a different outcome inside of every meeting, interaction, or conversation where we're headed for disaster, we're headed for failure, we're headed for, calamity even. And that one person who takes the courage to say, can I be honest instead of harmonious right now? And I
Mm,
will tell you, it's worth its weight in gold. It changes the dynamic. It changes the collaboration. Everybody just sort of clicks in, and we're able to have that final conversation where we've been avoiding for so long to have. And it's just been a great release for our team. And so we go to every client and we're like, choose honesty over harmony. Like, you'll win every time. 11 times out of 10, you will succeed.
love it, love it, love it, love it. Chris, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's all of us doing the work over time. That I love that you talked about the seven generations out, right? This all has a ripple impact. We want our ripple impact to be one for good. So
Yes.
everybody get out there and do the next right thing. We will see you next week on Everyday Inclusion and Belonging. Bye, y'all.